It's being reported right now, David Corn reporting over at Mother Jones in the last 45 minutes, actually, that Joe Manchin shared with President Biden earlier this week that he was thinking of leaving the Democratic Party, that he feels he is out of sync and out of step with the Democratic Party. His process would be to withdraw from Democratic leadership, and then probably by the end of next year, or by November of next year, to change his voter registration from Democratic to Independent. We'll see. You know, if he becomes an Independent, it sounds like he's doing this in measured steps, which I think is a good thing because we don't want to throw the control of the Senate to Mitch McConnell, frankly. But that said, you know, it is what it is. It just is what it is. And you know, maybe throwing the Senate back to the Republicans would provide an extra emphasis for people in states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, where you've got really significant Senate races that are going to be happening in 13 months, to you know, get out the votes for Democratic senators, and to, you know, to render Manchin and Sinema irrelevant. I think there's some possibilities out there. There's some real possibility. Iowa, Chuck Grassley. You know, we'll see where it goes. But he's talking about becoming an independent, and then he would have to decide whether he's going to caucus with the Democrats, like independent Angus King and independent Bernie Sanders do, or whether he's going to caucus with the Republicans, like independent Lisa Murkowski does. So, you know, stay tuned, as they say in the radio business. Picking up your phone calls here. Mike in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Oh, Tom, there's a number of things I can go on with you about. But, all right, well, first, let me just say real quick, yeah, what you were talking about with the one gentleman there, the unequal justice and all that. I mean, you talked about the Trump crime family. Well, that could apply to the Biden family, too.
I don't think so.
Now, I wanted to... Yeah, you look at Hunter's laptop and all that stuff. That's
I haven't seen any real smoking guns here. I think it looks bad, you know, Hunter getting anything, but I haven't seen any real smoking guns. And you can bet, Mike, if there was an actual smoking gun, every American would know it because the Republican Party would make sure that you knew all the details. And they're not.
Well,
they got nothing.
And they're reporting it, but the main press isn't.
No, they're just you know, the reporting on the right about Hunter's laptop and Hunter Biden has just been hysterical, or you know, oh my God, he was using drugs and he was with a hooker. Well, yeah, he was using drugs and he was with a hooker. The guy's a mess. What does that have to do with his dad?
No, it's the ties that he has to the foreign countries.
Yeah,
and a lot of people I know.
He took advantage of his dad's position. He exploited his father. You know, I've not seen any evidence that his father condoned that or set that up. And if he did, you know, he deserves to be condemned for it. But, you know, there's no evidence of any crimes there at all, Mike. And on the other hand, with Trump, I mean, you can look at all the times that Ivanka, for example, and Eric were committing fraud to sell real estate or to sell condos. You know, it's just there's just all kinds of crimes just laying around on the ground. But anyhow, that's not the point you were trying to make, Mike. You were going someplace else.
Right. Yeah, that's all debatable. But yeah, okay. Now you're talking about in this human infrastructure bill, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
The safety nets. Mm-hmm. You know, and the way you describe that, okay, safety nets. Isn't that what they're supposed to be? As safety nets. The problem is when you start a safety net, it's a permanent thing, and people stay on it and never get off of it. So how do you know, it's...
I get your critique, Mike. It's the classic Republican critique of the safety net. And let me just flip it upside down. The need for ongoing welfare for people is an indication that the conservatives have established an economy that doesn't work for most people.
Well,
right? If you had well-paying jobs, you wouldn't have people needing food stamps.
Well, now wages are definitely going up with this.
Not enough.
Now, there was something else that I talked to you about a while ago, and that's, yeah, they say they want to tax the rich. I don't hear any talk yet still about changing the tax code.
Yeah, and that's where we need. Yeah, and this is where we really need to focus. I mean, you talk about welfare. The biggest welfare recipient in the United States right now is Jeff Bezos. The second largest welfare recipient in the United States is probably ExxonMobil. These companies are, Walmart, they come into a community and they say, we're going to destroy all your local businesses. By the way, give us land tax-free. And it's the oil companies and the gas companies and Joe Manchin's coal company in West Virginia, they're all in welfare. They're getting massive multi-billion-dollar subsidies. All the welfare that poor people in the United States are getting all together combined is a tiny drop in the bucket just compared to the welfare just that the oil industry is getting, or just that Joe Manchin's coal industry is getting. So yeah, I'm with you, Mike. It's time to change our tax code and get the tax cheats off welfare and create a social safety net that actually does work for people. And I'd say there's two levels to that, Mike. One level is,
how come they're not proposing anything then?
Well,
I think
they
I've
are.
heard Elizabeth Warren,
the whole way that they were proposing to pay for the Build Back Better plan was by raising taxes on rich people and closing loopholes. So they are, Mike. They absolutely are. But to the point that I was trying to make just a moment ago, there are two kinds of social safety net. And I think, Mike, thank you for your question, because it really helps highlight this, and I want to speak to this. There are two issues here, and we need to separate them. We need to disentangle them. And the Republicans have done a good job of conflating them, of mixing them together. And Joe Manchin is too. And those two things are, number one, what do you do for people when they fall? How do you catch them when they fall? That's a small number of people. What do you do with people when they lose their job? What do you do with people when they're diagnosed with a fatal illness or something like this and they can no longer work? How do we deal with people who are disabled? How do we, somebody gets in a car accident, or born disabled for that matter, but somebody particularly during their productive lifespan, suddenly they can't work anymore. How do we provide for them? That's one question. How do we catch people when they fall? The other question, which Republicans constantly trying to mix these two together, the other question is, what should be the rights of citizenship in the United States? Should people have a right to health care at no or little cost in the United States, like they do in England, like they do in Canada, like they do in Australia, like they do in France, like they do in Germany, like they do in Norway, like they do in Denmark, like they do in, I could go through, I probably can't remember all the names of the 36 European Union countries. Like they do in Taiwan, like they do in South Korea. As a right of citizenship, should every American have access to basically free health care? Number one. Number two, as a right of citizenship, should every American have access to free college education and trade school? The ability to better themselves and to improve their skill sets so that they can participate in the economy. And then in the context of those two things, and I'm just picking two, there are a few others that we could talk about, a right to housing, a right to a job, a right, there's a bunch of them, but those two primary focus things. Then you ask the third question, which is, why would society not want to provide those things? And the answer to that is basically because somebody can make money on them and they are preventing people from getting them. You've got big banks that are holding $1.5 trillion in student debt and making a frigging fortune on it, hundreds of billions of dollars a year in interest. They don't want free college. And you've got big insurance companies who are literally making $1 billion a week in profit across the industry who don't want everybody to have free access to health care. It's just that simple. So then you ask the other question, well, if we did do these two things, gave everybody free education and gave everybody free health care, like they do in Canada, like they do in England, like they do in France, like they do in Germany, like they do in all these, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia. If we did that, what would the impact on our society be? Would it suddenly create a huge class of lazy people who don't want to work anymore, like, the right-wing billionaires will tell you, as they're giving free money to their children? Or would it energize our society? Would it revive our society? Would it be the thing that makes things work in our society again? If no longer did you have $1.5 trillion worth of debt on the backs of millions of young people in student debt, if no longer did you have 500,000 families going bankrupt and becoming homeless because somebody in their family got sick. These things are drags on our economy. Young people are not starting homes or buying homes. They're not starting families. They're not getting married. People who want to become entrepreneurs are not jumping into starting small businesses because they're afraid of losing their health insurance or because they owe $100,000 on their student loans. Now, these, in my opinion, are not social safety net issues. These are, because it's not catching people when they fall. These are investments you make in your society so it works better. Straightforward, that's it, and that's what we should be doing. Now, I get it. Conservatives like Joe Manchin and the entire Republican Party think, well, if you do those things, then your insurance companies and your banks are going to lose some of their profit. And they are big donors to the Republican Party and, presumably to conservatives in the Democratic Party. But I don't hear any other argument beyond that, frankly.